Okay. So welcome, everyone. I just want to let you know that I have started the recording for our presentation this evening. My name is Mary Roberge, and I'm one of your hosts tonight. I also have working with me Ashley Davis. She is our Associate State Director of Outreach and Advocacy for AARP New Hampshire. She will help me monitor the chat box. So if you do have some questions or you have some comments, please feel free to leave them in the chat. AARP has been promoting the health and the well-being of older Americans for over 60 years. In New Hampshire, we serve as a trusted resource for our members and the public with informative, innovative, and fun virtual events as a means of staying connected and inclusion. We have numerous free healthy living resources on our website, which include staying fit, wellness and longevity, and information on healthy eating, as well as staying sharp. We have something for everyone. You can connect to these resources by going to www.aarp.org/healthy living. And later I will put that link in the chat. So tonight's interactive workshop with Kelly is going to show us how we can rethink this time of the year with the shorter days and the colder weather so that we can embrace opportunities to find joy, restorative self-care, and a new outlook for the upcoming winter season. Kelly Dwyer is the founder of Nature Education Opportunities, and she is an award-winning environmental educator and certified New Hampshire elementary teacher. She has been creating and delivering engaging programs for audiences for all ages for over 50 years. She is a certified wellness coach, and she looks to bring a deep understanding of the numerous benefits of connecting with the natural world to reduce stress, improve our health, and embrace a more mindful approach to life and learning. She's an avid gardener and cook, and she loves to spend time with her family, which includes her husband and her daughter. Kelly, we are so happy that you're able to join us this evening.
Great. Thank you very much, Mary. And thank you for everyone who is sort of behind the scenes. I can't see you, but I wish you well. And I'm very grateful that you're here tonight. And just take a moment to congratulate yourself for making this commitment for your well being. I suspect that you're here because you have a little sense of trepidation about coming winter. And my goal tonight is to sort of give you some tools, give you a frame of reference and some ways to look at winter differently. I was saying to Mary before we started that I happened to look at my weather app, and tonight here we're in New Hampshire, where we're broadcasting from. The sunset was 6 o'clock, so it's the last time we'll see a 6 o'clock sunset for a little while, and that gave me a little feeling of, oh no. So I too am grappling with what winter may hold for the next several months. Um, but I created this workshop this past summer in response to a lot of people saying, I just have such a difficult time navigating the winter. I dread it. I can already feel myself becoming anxious about it. And I thought, there's lots of people that have very interesting relationship with winter. So I put this together, and it's been something that's a lot of fun to deliver in person and through Zoom. So hopefully you will come away after our hour together with a real concrete way that you can approach winter differently. In the chat, or actually out in your email, your confirmation email was a document where it's a wintering well plan, which I will reference throughout our presentation tonight, but it's designed to be done on your own time after this workshop, where you'll have context and information to complete that and give you a real solid toolkit to navigate the upcoming months. Okay, so just again to sort of frame our time this evening, the workshop agenda. So we will spend some time on processing the factors that have influenced our relationship with winter. Many of them are things that are operating in the background. They could be memories, experiences that really have a profound effect on the way that we show up with winter and how we feel about winter, that we need to sort of bring them to the light of day so that we can look at it and see how we can change our winter mindsets and behaviors. And then I will go into some real concrete tools and a process to discover winter's opportunities and joys, because they are there. And it's kind of fun to have people put into the chat at that point different ideas that they have or suggestions or things they're looking forward to. So again, you will have that wintering well plan that you can either download or print after the workshop tonight, and then you'll have some context to fill that in. There'll be times throughout the program that are a natural break for us to check the chat, ask any, questions that you may have. So please feel free to. I'd love to make this as interactive as we can, given the webinar format. Okay, so let's kind of talk about factors that have affected our perception of winter. So we'll dig a little bit deeper into these three common areas, one of them being the common lore. Biology, believe it or not, has a tremendous impact on our relationship with winter. And the most profound and one that I'm excited about are mindsets, because that is where we can do a lot of work to make a difference in how we go forward. So common lore, and you'll notice there's some pictures that are kind of scattered about, outside pictures. These are all from my backyard. This was from a couple of years ago. It was a dreadful sleet storm that I thought was really beautiful the way it coated the trees. So I kind of captured that. And again, like the cover slide, I'm just curious what your perception of different winter scenes that I have experienced here in New Hampshire. But common lore, it's a couple of different things. It's personal narratives, those lived experiences that we've had throughout our lives, and all of us are at different points. But I suspect being here with AARP, you're probably like me over the age of 50. So you've had a sort of a rich collection of experiences and also those conversations. It's interesting as before we even started, we were already talking about the weather. So it's something that is really sort of a universal theme that brings people together, strangers together, to chat about weather. And then what the expectations. It's kind of fun to start thinking about what you're hearing when you're in the grocery store, what people are talking about. So to sort of put your radar up on that. But just to give a little bit of context around personal narratives and what I mean by that, um, it's kind of what we bring to sort of the winter table, if you will. And I'll use some examples from my own life. I grew up south of Boston in Massachusetts. I grew up in a very, very avid hockey family. My dad was a hockey player in college. I have three brothers that we all played hockey on pond ice. And it was really something that I so enjoyed. I can still remember the end of the day when the sun was just setting, it was dark, and my dad would sit me down, and my feet and my hands were so cold that he would have to unlace my skates and help me into my boots. And then walking home through the woods to our home where we had a wood stove going, and then having cocoa and having that feeling of my feet start to thaw out in my hands. And it was that painful feeling, but it was a feeling of having been outside in the fresh air, doing something I love to do. And my birthday's the day after Christmas, so I am definitely a winter baby, and I have been most of my childhood. I remember my mother yelling out the back door, Kelly, put that coat back on, because I'd be in my short sleeve shirt and I would be making snowmen with my brothers and snowball fights. So I loved winter. That was my personal narrative until I moved up here about 30 years ago, got married, and then after a couple of years, we had our first daughter, and Laura was born December 28th in 1996, and it was a dreadful winter. It was snowy, it was cold, it was very difficult. I suddenly found myself, I had left or paused a very, very active career in teaching, and suddenly I'm home with this colicky newborn. It was cold, it was snowy, I couldn't get out readily. And that lived experience changed my entire perception about winter. I became someone that resented winter. I hated it. And then 2 years later, I didn't really learn much from my first experience. I had my second daughter December 19th. So now I have two babies. I'm home with a toddler and a newborn in December into January, another really rough winter. So that changed my whole perception of winter that I have been working now almost 30 years. I'm trying to undo that. And so if you think about your lived experiences, and I do want to mention one thing, it's really important, especially for those of us who are living in climates that have a lot of snow and ice. Many times the winter driving can also be another lived experience that makes it difficult to face winter and to navigate around and to socialize and do errands and get to work. So that's another sort of layer that can make it really difficult to have winter as a joyful thing if it's we're presented with rough driving. And I had an experience years ago where I almost went off the road in Vermont because of an icy situation in the mountains, and it was very harrowing. So even to this day, I find myself getting very anxious if there's a weather forecast for, hazardous road conditions. So we have to really pay attention to those personal narratives, the stories that we've experienced, and also what our memories of winter have been up until this point. They have a huge impact on where we're at now. So it's worth kind of sitting back later on and kind of thinking about what your relationship with winter from an early point up until now has been. And then I mentioned again those collective conversations. There's nothing to bring a crowd together or a group of strangers like a pending weather event, be it, a storm in the summer or the upcoming winter. So pay attention when you're at the grocery store or out running errands. You'll start to see and hear that conversation kind of coming to winter. I popped into a Lowe's today to get some potting soil, and I couldn't believe, well, I could believe it. Here we're not even at Halloween, and they already had all the Christmas trees up. And I could kind of hear people like, oh, I can't believe it. I can't, that season's here already. And the grumbling and the, kind of the astonishment that this is actually ahead of us. So kind of look at what common lore has meant in your personal life and just again elevate it to that awareness level. Biology. This is something that we really don't think much about, but we are part of the natural world. We are mammals. And if you think about what mammals are doing this time of year to get ready for winter, many of us probably want to adopt the strategy of this little curled up chipmunk who's just going to pretty much sleep away a lot of the winter in the burrow with a seed and a nut store ready for those periods when they do wake up. They're not true hibernators. But the natural world has three different strategies to deal with the pending winter because it is a season of challenge. And when I teach kids how to remember the strategies that the wildlife and the natural world uses, I frame it as HAM, the acronym HAM, HAM. And it's all about the food. And that's what determines how everything in the wild really navigates winter. So we have either hibernators, like the bear, the woodchuck, to some degree, this little chipmunk, or we have the animals that adapt to represent the A. And we are part of that group, as well as, deer. And you think about a lot of the little birds that are still active in the winter time. And then, of course, we have the M, the migrators. So unless you are actually moving to the tropics for winter, you will be grappling with winter changes in the next couple of weeks, in the next few months, primarily. But if we think about the biology of mammals slowing down and adapting, putting on extra fat, many of us wonder, why is that happening to us this time of year? We're not even into the holidays yet. It's because biologically we are programmed to store that extra nutrition, the extra weight, because we never know when there'll be scarcity. And we're also biologically programmed to slow down, to really have a sense of rest. But what's happened in the last couple of decades, and primarily I would say in the last 10 years, we're disconnected from these natural seasonal cycles. If you think about, parents or even grandparents, they were done farming, they were done canning, they were done putting food in different cold cellars for the winter. Things would be sort of buttoning down, they would be wrapping up they were resting, they were restoring, they were going with those seasonal cycles and clues. And we're not really doing that now because our lives and the way things are structured are very different than they were even, say, 50 years ago. So even though we should be slowing down and resting, our lives aren't necessarily conducive to that right now. And we'll get into that in a little bit, how we can actually build that in a positive way. Um, but rest and restoration is really important for our health and our well-being. And many of us may have that sense of feeling a little bit guilt if you feel like you want to get your pajamas on early, right after you get home from work or running errands or after dinner. I came down the other day with I have a really bright pink terry cloth robe, and I had come in from work and I came downstairs and my husband said, "Are you okay?" Because that's unusual for me to be sort of in my pajamas until I go to bed. But I, listening to those cues, my body felt, I just want to get cozy and I'm feeling kind of tired, and that's okay. So instead of that normal, what's wrong with me, if we're feeling a little bit sort of sluggish or fatigued, it's normal, it's okay. And we'll talk again in another couple of slides about how we can actually work with that to our advantage. I do want to say a bit about seasonal affective disorder as opposed to winter blues. Seasonal affective disorder, which is the acronym is SAD, very appropriate. It's actually a subtype of clinical depression that's diagnosed using the criteria from the DSM-5 or the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. So very few people have truly diagnosed seasonal affective disorder. And if you are one that has been diagnosed with that from a clinician, absolutely, you know the protocol that is best for you going forward. Many of us are more experiencing the winter blues, which is the normal biological responses to winter. Like I just mentioned, some of that sense of disconnect, kind of slowing down a little bit, not as motivated, which is biologically kind of what should be happening to our body. But so we want to really pay attention to the language. I have a lot of people that I talk to that they say, that I definitely have seasonal affective disorder. So it's important that we know the difference of those two different terms. Okay, so let's kind of talk about the influence of our mindsets. And this is another large area for us to understand and to kind of dig into so we can put some context and frame around how it plays into our winter perception. And then, therefore, we can make some changes when we get into more of our action steps. The exciting thing about mindset, and many of you probably have heard a lot about mindset and the ability of us to actually shift and change our mindsets, which to me is very exciting work in the field of neuroscience, that we can change our mindsets. We can't change our biology, nor can we really change our to date lived experiences. But this is an area that we can really have some positive impact on this coming winter and what we decide to do. So we're going to dig into these three areas in a little bit more depth as these cold weather blues start to roll toward us. So we'll look at our evolution, we'll discuss self-fulfilling prophecies, and then we'll kind of put it together, and then that will set our frame to go right into our what I call the meat and potatoes of our work tonight, the actual tools and areas where we can plan. Okay, so just to kind of do a quick little review about our evolutionary past. Many of you are familiar probably at this point in time with that term, the limbic system. This is that reptilian primitive part of our brainstem that's responsible for the fight, flight, or freeze response. And that it's an incredible part of our brain that's constantly surveying our surrounding for potential threats. So if you think about us and how we evolved as a species, we were facing a lot of threats that required action or to be sort of frozen. And unfortunately, that part of our biology, that part of our brain has not adapted or evolved. It's incredible system that is still there, but unfortunately, it perceives a lot of things as threats that really aren't a true threat that require the level of response that we may actually be producing. So if something is perceived as a threat, and I'll use that example about my horrible driving experience years ago, and I was in my 20s at the time, but if I see or hear a forecast of, that there's going to be heavy snowfall or ice, I can feel the cortisol, the adrenaline, those stress hormones flooding my body. And that will cause that feeling of rapid heartbeat, shallow respiration, even my hands might get sweaty. All of those are physiological changes in response to my body going to take action, fight, flight, or freeze. So if you think about times in your own life, it could be something like an email from a colleague or a loved one that sounds like it's something as bad as happening. So lots of things in our lives today can elicit this type of stress response. And unfortunately, because we're not as active as we were years ago, and that we're surrounded by a lot of different type of stress stimuli, we get stuck in that chronic stress loop. So there's a factor that's going on sort of behind the scenes that we may not be aware of. The other thing, and I love this little acronym, ANTS. These are the automatic negative thinking. Again, our brain is a brilliant organism that has evolved to keep us safe, protect us so that we are still here today. And the ants, if we think about the thoughts that we have over the course of one given day, and scientists estimate it's anywhere from 60 to 80,000 thoughts that we have every single day. And there's an extremely high percentage of thoughts that we're having day after day. About 80 to 85% are the same things that are operating in the background in our thinking that were there yesterday. So they become very deeply neural grooves that we're automatically thinking the same type of things. So it can be good, but it can also be challenging in terms of our well-being. So just by being aware of our thinking can really help us make a difference to change that. And then, of course, we have the negativity bias. Again, this is sort of a hardwired neurotransmitter process where information coming in is coded as a threat or a memory, and the negativity bias tends to be those things that make the biggest impression on us. It's designed that way, our brain. Um, so just to kind of pay attention to your thinking, not only about winter, but I would encourage us to think about how we respond and think about things throughout our lives. And I just want to say before I forget that this program is designed for wintering, the season of winter that's coming up. But a lot of the things we'll talk about and that we'll plan for can be things used in sort of what psychologists call the sort of like the wintering times in our lives, those times that may be challenging, whether it's a loss of a loved one, an illness, loss of a job, something that will really challenge our well-being. So kind of we can cast a big net with the things that we'll be talking about tonight, which I find very exciting. Okay, the self-fulfilling prophecies. Many of you are probably familiar with what we expect creates our reality. It's that glass half empty, glass half full approach to life and situations, conversations, experiences. There's a wonderful motivational speaker named Byron Katie. Many of you may be familiar with her work. In this next point here, question your thoughts. Thoughts and emotions are really only little energy packets that go along the neural pathways in our brain. They're little thoughts that are information and energy that's filled with different neurotransmitters. So we should be questioning our thoughts, especially if those are the things that can bring us some negative experiences or make us feel overwhelmed. Byron Katie has a great way she phrases this. She says, would that information or that thought stand up in the court of law? Show me the evidence that it's really true. So if you think about maybe a time when you came into a room and people just had that sort of a scowling expression on, or someone seemed upset, sometimes our tendency is to think, what did I do? What did I say? Where that person could just simply be experiencing a bad phone call or a text or something upsetting. It has nothing to do with us, but we tend to have our thoughts sometimes be a little bit on the negative side. So question your thoughts, just like I'm going to encourage you to question your thoughts about the realities of winter as we move into the next section of our time together. So, the neuroplasticity and rewiring our brain is a new area in science, relatively new, about 15 years in the making, that a lot of information supporting the ability of our brains to rewire. And it takes repetition and some concerted effort, but we can actually change the way our brains are operating and thinking, which I find extremely exciting. And that is going to absolutely help us as we plan and get ready and navigate through the upcoming winter. Okay, so just to kind of wrap up mindset, because this is really the biggest area that we can utilize to make sure that we show up in April and look back and say, wow, that was really great. I had a wonderful winter because, so we'll be looking at ways to fill in those gaps. But if look at your fixed mindset regarding winter right now, almost like where is your baseline? Where are you starting? Many of us may be thinking that in a narrative of winter's awful and I just have to get through it. I've heard that a lot lately in these workshops. And if we think about it, winter for many of us, depending on where we are in the country, and I know we have, Tennessee, Missouri, we have places that experience winter from what I've heard from folks that are on the call tonight. Winter can be one third of our year. That's a long time to be in that mindset. It's awful. I'll just get through it. Think of the opportunities that we're missing, the joys, the opportunities to be with people. So if we could start to reframe our mindset, we're halfway there to really having a much better winter experience. Okay, so I like to look at these three as what I call the guiding principles. It's a real way to shift the mindset and choices that we can make, because it really comes down to choice. So that famous expression, if you can't change the stressor, change your response to it. So again, unless you are going to be migrating to the tropics for the winter, winter is going to be what it probably has been for the last 5 or 6 years, and that is changing too with a warming climate. It can make it even more challenging. Instead of beautiful snow around here in New Hampshire, for example, we're getting more bitter winds and icy conditions, which makes it, I think, a lot more challenging. There's something beautiful about snow, but ice, not so much. So we can't change that stressor, but we need to change our response to it. And I love this next one, the middle one. It's a mindset that if you think about really anything in life, it hold you back or propel you forward. So again, it's all a choice. So winter, it can be gloomy and monotonous or cozy and restful. So if you think about when April rolls around and things are thawing and spring is here again, how do you want to look back on the next 4 or 5, maybe even 6 months, depending on where you are? It may be well into April before it feels like spring is here. So I suspect you want a different experience. You don't want it gloomy and monotonous. You'd rather come away feeling cozy and restful. That's probably why you're here tonight. So at this point, Mary, I just want to kind of pause because we've talked now about the frame around our mindset and some of the things that we bring to our lived collective experiences that have sort of brought us to where we are in terms of our relationship with winter at this point. So I want to just check in to see if there's been any questions or clarifications needed before we move into our next part.
I have not seen any questions at all, Kelly.
Okay. All right, great. Well, again, if you do have a thought or a question that comes up, please pop it into the chat, and we can certainly be addressing it as we go through the next half of our workshop here.
Oh,
All right, so now we're getting. Oh,
Kelly,
yes,
I
yes.
do, just as I said that, we do have one comment. This is from Stephen, who deeply appreciates this event and the online opportunities, as his biggest challenge at this time of year is the decreased daylight due to the inability to drive in the dark.
Okay. All right. Yes, Stephen, that is a reality for a lot of us. Like I said before, we have 6 o'clock sunset now. Um, so I have deliberately through these next areas that we'll talk about, Stephen, woven in some ideas that I have that we can sort of address that because that's true for many of us. Driving in the dark, is just not really a safe option or even an option at all. So what I would love to do is just to kind of hold that thought, and hopefully as we go through these areas, and I've woven in each one some ideas to sort of offset the need to drive. So hopefully at the end of that, Stephen, and if it's something that we still would love to chat about and get ideas for the group, I want to make sure that um, that is kind of something front and center. And I think a lot of us would be grappling with the same thing that you just brought up. So thank you for raising that. So these areas of opportunity, I look at it as areas of opportunities um, to make changes, to enact plans, to change mindset, to really put in some concrete, really detailed action steps. And we'll go through each one of these. And they are really sort of what I call the meat and potatoes of the Winter Well plan, because this is our opportunity to be proactive with our thinking in really these main areas. And I think as we go through them, you'll see where there's a lot of possibility. And I would invite people as we move through each of these areas in detail. If you have ideas, if you have thoughts, or you have excitement around something you're going to do within each one, please pop it into the chat so we can all learn from each other and share these ideas. There's no need to reinvent the wheel if someone has some great ideas with them. Okay.
So Kelly,
So the
just
first, yes.
two more comments. One, is with the shorter days, how can someone get proper sleep in the winter? And this is related. The other question is the darkness and the short daylight hours are hard. And do you have advised using SAD lamps?
Um, Very good questions. And I think I'll address the second one first, Mary. Like I said, seasonal affective disorder is an absolute like clinical diagnosis. I would suggest if you feel that that's something you want to pursue, you meet with your doctor and they could refer you to someone who specializes in this, a clinician that specializes in seasonal affective disorder. From my research and understanding, there's a lot of the sort of like happy lamps, they call them. You could get one on Amazon for a couple of bucks. They don't necessarily have the broad spectrum of light that would be recommended by a clinician to truly address a disorder like seasonal affective disorder. So if you feel that that's something that you would benefit from, I would highly recommend you talk with your physician to really get proper guidance on that. Um, and then as far as the how to get better sleep, that's the $1 million question for I think many of us throughout the year, but particularly this time of year. I think the best thing that I would recommend, and we're going to this is a perfect segue into this, is many of us are fighting sort of the feelings of that need to rest and restore because it's dark. We might feel sleepy, we might feel tired, we might feel the need to rest more, and I suspect a lot of us are fighting that. So as I have in this first bullet, to recognize your seasonal shifts. It's a little bit different for each one of us, but like I mentioned, biology, we are mammals, we are actually physiologically designed to start slowing down, to want more sleep, maybe even sleeping at different times of the day, or our sleep schedule is going to be slightly disrupted as it gets darker and colder. So it may not look like it did in July or August. So just to again, if it's something that is definitely impacting your life significantly, I would recommend that you meet with your physician and maybe get some help on that and some clinical help. But I think if it's something that you're just seeing now as it's getting darker and colder and the lights diminishing, that you're noticing that seasonal shift, maybe pay more attention to what your body's calling for. I know, like, for example, last night I was asleep by 8:30 and I slept till 6 this morning. I'm usually up by 4 and in bed by 10. And I said to my husband, "What is going on?" And he said, "Hello, you've been talking about this workshop and the need for more rest because you are a mammal." So you can tell that I've been talking to my family about this. And it took me time to realize, Of course, my body's been busy over the summer, the spring, even into the fall, and it's now starting to require more rest, more relaxation, more restoration, and I'm trying to honor that. So hopefully that answers the question that came up, because it's probably the number one thing I hear is that my sleep is disrupted. I don't want to be sleeping so much. I don't want to relax. I have so much I have to do. But I would definitely encourage you to honor what your body is asking you to do as it makes the shift into sort of this winter mode. Um, and also to think about, when we think about rest and restoring, there's many ways that that looks like for us. For example, looking at this picture, and I wish this was my living room because this is lovely, but think about what you're compelled to do. If you could step into this scene, would you maybe have a nice book and a cup of tea, drag that Afghan over yourself, plump into those cozy pillows, and read? Would you curl up in a ball and snuggle into that Afghan and just truly take a great restorative nap? Again, it's different for each one of us, but start to really think about ways that you can start to almost plan in more rest, more restoration. And as I mentioned before, those societal messages, because we are now more of almost like a 24/7 operating society. There is no shutdown anymore like it used to be. And you could be doing online work, messaging people, watching things on social media and TV at 2 in the morning. So there's really no delineation or not as clear as it used to be. So pay attention to how you're framing the need for rest. Are you feeling lazy, not as productive? Are you like me that was struggling with guilt, wanting to just kind of call it quits for the night and just curl up with a book, or I feel like I have so much I have to do? So we need to really think about the benefits of embracing rest, because many of us have had busy spring, summer, and fall schedules. This is the season where our body is just almost crying out for that slowing down, because it allows us to heal. It allows us to restore our energy, reduce our stress. And probably the biggest thing is our vagus nerve, which is that large nerve bundle that goes throughout our entire body, has had a lot of action lately. And it needs to have that time to sort of rest, to restore that balance properly. And digestion, too. This is really a critical thing. If we're resting, our digestion is actually better. We're able to absorb the nutrients of the food that we put in our body for any healing. And think about the trees. Mary and I were talking about the trees before we opened the call to everyone, and how trees now are starting to shed their leaves. They're going into that sort of restoration, hibernation state. So even trees are starting to recognize that there is a need, a compelling biological need for resting and restoring. I can't emphasize it enough. So, what does resting and restoring look like to you? Again, your seasonal cues are different than maybe mine are, and you might feel compelled to sort of try out different forms of resting. Is it a nap? Is it cozy reading? Is it just maybe a phone call with a friend as you lie on a couch or cozy up? But experiment with the options and truly celebrate, even entertaining the idea that you will be thinking about it a little bit differently, because that will shift your mindset, and then you'll be able to hone in on things that are working for you. But give it a couple of weeks. This time of year is difficult, especially when we get into, I think it's November 1st or 2nd, that we're actually turning the clocks back. So that creates havoc for many of us for at least a week, while our bodies now that have just started to adjust to this diminishing daylight, now we have a whole new shift that we have to readjust to. So be patient and be gentle as your body gets through the next couple of weeks, and then it should start to settle in a little bit. All right, food and nutrition. I mentioned a lot of us are starting to feel those cravings coming on a little bit more. I know last night I looked at the pasta in my cabinet and I thought, oh man, that would be so delicious with some butter cheese and some pesto that I had made this summer in the freezer, and it tasted so good. I was craving that delicious carbohydrate. So We need to start thinking about eating with the seasons, the Ayurvedic whole philosophy of what's seasonal. And especially here where we have beautiful vegetables, the root crops that are coming in, being available in the grocery stores. This is a lentil veggie soup that I made last year, and I just made another batch of it over the weekend. It's chock full of everything, lots of proteins, lots of wonderful fresh root veggies that I freeze. I put it in just mason jars, throw it in the deep freezer so I have something ready for a quick lunch to thaw if I'm on the road or even dinner. But feed those cravings. It's important to nourish what our body's asking us to do, just like with the rest. I'm a salad gal. Give me a salad with all the fixings and I love it, but I'm not craving that anymore so much as I did even a month ago. So pay attention to what your body's asking you to do. And like I mentioned, feed those cravings. I love apple pie. I love it with a piece of fresh Irish cheddar cheese, but I don't want to be having that, every night. So what I've been doing is baking apples, putting them in a little ceramic jar, and maybe little touch of cinnamon, some nutmeg, even a little bit of maple syrup or a pat of butter, and I'm roasting them. So I'm still having that fresh baked apple pie feeling, but it's a little bit of a healthier version for something that's kind of becoming a little bit more of a habit. So we can feed those cravings in a healthy way. So it's just let your fingers do the walking and the research online. There's so many different wonderful cooking sites to really pay attention to how you can honor the food that your body is asking you to put in it at this time of year. I'll say a word about dining rituals, because again, most of us will be eating probably breakfast and dinner in the dark. It's time to sort of shift what that can look like. If you have the ability to have maybe some placemats, some dim lights, so it provides a soothing atmosphere. One of my favorite thing to do is to take, I have a big white salad bowl, I fill it with about an inch of water, I get some nice leaves and some chrysanthemums, some fall sort of themed vegetation. I put it in the water, I float some tea lights, and that's our little centerpiece. So these new dining rituals are really wonderful. One thing you can do that is very helpful, and this is kind of one of my suggestions for if you can't get out to eat with friends because it's hard to drive in the dark, set up a time where you can have sort of a Zoom dining experience or a FaceTime dining experience. I had to do this when one of my daughters lived in Madrid, so that was the only time we could sort of eat together. And so it was just being creative. It was thinking outside the box in ways that we can still connect with each other. And technology can be a wonderful thing. A lot of us had to resort to really creative technology in the early couple of years of the pandemic. So kind of dust off some of those things that we might have done to sort of keep connected with people. So that's a thought there. But make sure that we're eating slowly, chewing your food, nourishing yourself, savoring all the different textures in your food, because that will help your nervous system too. Okay, so cultivating hobbies. So I suspect that everybody on this call has that list of those projects, the what I call them the when I get time, that they kind of accumulate. There's lots of things I know that I have on my to-do list to fix in the house. Now that I can't be outside doing things around the yard and the gardens, it's time to maybe paint the baseboards or kind of clean out closets and things. And it's a running joke in my family that Mom can't even get to the basement or her closet until it's cold and dark because she has to be outside. And of course, being a naturalist, that's what I do for a living. So they're not wrong. But now I have time to get to those things that have kind of accumulated. So to feel productive, think about those things around the house and make that part of your action plan. Dust off those forgotten crafts I talk about. I was vacuuming under my couch the other day and I realized there's two canvas bags of Afghans that are half done crocheted Afghans that I thought instead of feeling stressed about, "Oh my gosh, I forgot all about that. When am I going to get to it, finish these things?" I thought that's a perfect sitting around the Christmas tree thing to do. With Christmas music playing, family, and just to kind of crochet. So I already have plans for those bags that got shoved under the couch. And then also to embrace new ideas and hobbies of interest. There again, there's so much online that we can do. So it's perfect if you have an interest in learning how to paint. There's lots of online classes for pretty much anything you want to do. So it's a great way, again, if we are challenged by trying to drive at night, or we don't want to, or it's just something that we need to think about engaging with new ideas and new interests in a different way. So much can be done online. Um, I started learning how to speak Irish. I'm an Irish citizen, and that's something I really want to acquire that language. And being an early riser, typically, this morning was a little bit of an anomaly there. I'm usually up at 4:30. It's dark for another 2.5 hours before I can even get outside or do anything. So it was stressful last year to think, oh my gosh, I've got like 2 hours of darkness. So I reframed that whole mindset and I started my Irish self-guided workshops. And I did it in the morning with a cup of coffee, my breakfast. I love it. I can't wait to get back into that. So think about ways that you can use the time at home, either online or doing things within your own home space. But I would definitely encourage you to sort of create a little spot, maybe in your home, or whether it's an office or a den or some room that invites that slowing down and being present, maybe to read or to paint or to crochet or whatever you feel like you want to explore, something new, something that you're dusting off and kind of resurrecting again. But just looking forward to coming into a space that has the atmosphere of slowing down and nourishing your interests and your creative side really will go a long way when it's cold and snowy outside.
Kelly,
Okay.
Kelly, I'd like
Yeah,
to share a thought from one of our attendees. Um,
great.
she and her husband, okay, they take off after Christmas, take off their Christmas ornaments, but keep the lights on. And they put some inexpensive white snowflake ornaments on it, and they keep that artificial tree up through February, which
Love
gives
it.
them a lot of peace.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is something I'm already envisioning taking my ornaments down, leaving up the white lights, and I've got lots of snowflake ornaments. So that's perfect. You could even cut them out of paper if you wanted to. That's a wonderful, wonderful idea. Um, so if we think about the phases of winter, if we look at winter as one big chunk of time, it can be daunting and overwhelming. So if we realistically break it down into what it really looks like around much of the country and places where I suspect that we have people calling in from. So right now I would say that we're just about entering that first stage, early winter. This is when daylight savings in another week or so is going to happen through the holiday season, through the beginning, say, of January, where many of us are experiencing Thanksgiving, or whether it's either, Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Christmas or whatever, the celebratory atmosphere up until the beginning of January really can kind of help us out here. And part of the winter well plan, I have a section where I ask us to kind of look at each of these phases and write down what you're looking forward to, or what you've celebrated, or what you the traditions that bring joy, because that's the whole thing here, is it really to bring joy. And the idea of leaving the Christmas tree with the white lights and snowflake ornaments has brought a lot of joy to my thinking already. So thank you for sharing that. And then midwinter is really when this is kind of like where the rubber meets the road. These are the doldrums of winter. There's just no other way to spin it. So this is where we probably want to do the most planning and thinking about how to navigate January and February. And our caller just said, this wonderful tree is left up into February. So there's one small, simple, but powerful way to bring some joy to those particular months where things can be very challenging. So why not I love to bake. So I could do snowman or snowflake cookies in mid-January and invite friends over for a cookie swap where I do it for the holidays. So think about ways that we can expand those traditions and bring them through the entire winter. And then we have late winter, which is typically into mid to late March, February through March. And March is an interesting month. In the natural world, naturalists, we call March the month of awakening because this is when you may hear your first spring peepers. Early migrating birds are coming back. There's definitely a change in the natural world with the lighting, the temperature, the activity of animals in March. So it's a hopeful month. So really, when we think about it, the kind of the real tough parts of winter are really only potentially 1.5 to 2 months. So hopefully by looking at it in these little stages, it doesn't seem quite as daunting. Okay, to say a word about lighting, because this was a game changer for me when I really understood how lighting was affecting me. If you've gone from a workplace or a store where it's harsh overhead fluorescent lights. You come outside to a dark parking lot, and then you go home and there's overhead lights in the kitchen or your living area that are fluorescent that are harsh. It's a lot for our nervous system to try to process the soft versus harsh light. So lots of studies show that if we have softer lighting, it will be more soothing to our nervous system. So this is something that I'm really making an effort around my own home to do. Of course, my number one thing is safety. If you need overhead lighting and really excellent lighting to make sure that your home space is safely navigated, then absolutely we can add some other things in, but safety is paramount. Um, so kind of pay attention to the lighting around your home. Add maybe more floor or table lights like this scene in the upper picture there, where it looks more inviting, it looks more soothing and cozy. It's better for our nervous systems if we can kind of move in that direction. Invite winter inside by not having necessarily so much light that you can't see outside. I have some nice floodlights out in the back of our house that we put on when we're eating dinner in a glass porch that we built. So I feel like we're part of the outside, but we're not having to navigate the elements out there. So there are ways to sort of bring winter inside without actually opening the windows and doors. So be creative with that. Um, One thing that my daughter discovered a couple of years ago were candle warmers, and boy, has this made a difference. I have one on my kitchen counter when I come down in the morning, 4:30, and I get the coffee pot going. I pop that candle warmer on, so it's a little soft glow of light. And growing up with a dad who was a firefighter, a brother who's a firefighter, we didn't burn candles because of the safety risk. So to have the scent of the candles that I adore being kind of released with this candle warmer, and it's a safe thing to have, really is exciting. Or fairy lights, or string lights, or leave your Christmas lights on. So different ways to incorporate soft lighting can really go a long way. So again, think about different options as we get into this more season of darkness. All right, make it social. This is probably one of the most challenging parts of winter for many of us who are social and love to get together with family and friends. Weather, darkness, all of that really challenges our ability to socialize, which can contribute to these feelings of winter blues, or in many cases, even the seasonal affective disorder for that population. So again, think creatively, look back on when you fill out your 3 phases of winter, traditions and things you love and look forward to, and put them into the entire winter. Have potlucks. I was thinking this morning, I was texting some friends that I love to make charcuterie boards. It's one of my favorite things. I already have the idea of having a charcuterie board get together I will provide sort of like the cheese and the crackers and some of the traditional things. I have a friend who loves to do desserts. She's making a dessert charcuterie board. So we can be creative with how we have different potlucks or book clubs. And some of these things could be done even online. A book club certainly is conducive for a Zoom call or FaceTime with a friend. So use technology to make sure that you are able to still stay social and stay in touch with loved ones and friends so that you have that fulfillment of socializing. Or have things during the day if you can, or on the weekends during the day. So maybe some things that are traditionally done in the evening, like a movie night, should be a movie afternoon with popcorn and other fun snacks. So we just need to be a little bit creative, think outside the box. And like I mentioned, the new traditions that we can weave into those January, February months that might be a little bit more challenging. Winter solstice parties. I've done this the last couple of years where I have people come over and we think about um, what have you done in the last year that has brought you a lot of joy to celebrate, and then what are your goals for the next year? Because I love, instead of January 1st, I find that as like a self-imposed sort of point of stress where everybody scrambles to think about, oh my gosh, what are my goals this year? Am I going to go to the gym? Am I going to do that? I love to honor the winter solstice, and we put out refreshments for our animal friends that are appropriate. There's lots of bird seed and other cut up veggies and fruits that go out for our the animals in the woods. And then the same thing, a vernal equinox celebration around March 20th to celebrate spring, that equal day and night at that point. Um, Seed catalogs. I love to garden, and I just start getting those seed catalogs in January, and I start to get excited to think about my hands in the soil again. Invite your fellow gardener friends over for a Saturday, maybe a luncheon to look over the seed catalogs. Or I had one person say a couple weeks ago in this workshop, and I'm borrowing her idea here. She said, I can't wait to have my friends come over in their pajamas and their robes, and we're gonna have like breakfast for dinner, and we're gonna look over the seed catalogs. And she was so excited about rolling into all of these different traditions. So think about ways that you can be social, get those feel good hormones coming. And again, there's lots of ways we can do this online too. Pretty much anything here could be done through Zoom or FaceTime with friends. Technology can work for us to keep connected. All right, as a naturalist, I love to be outside. And this saying is so true. There's no bad weather, there's just poor clothing choices. So think about now, as before we get into real ice and snow and the real cold, take an inventory of what your outdoor clothing options look like. Is it time to replace maybe some waterproof pants, some mittens, some gloves, some boots, so that you are ready to roll outside in layers, waterproof layers, so that you're comfortable, because there's nothing more that will deter us from being outside if we're wet and miserable. Nobody wants that. So be prepared, do an assessment, and then look for those winter activities that something that you might have enjoyed when you were younger. Lots of things are being offered in our communities. Make sure you're checking for different winter festivals. Lots of communities that deal with winter are offering this in January to get people together, on a Saturday or a Sunday, to have that socializing. There's a wonderful one in Boston. It's called Snowport. We've been going to that for a couple of years, where there's, different food vendors. You can get hot chocolate, you can get all kinds of hot drinks and fun little crafts that you can buy. So it's just a nice festive atmosphere. Lots of communities are looking to put more of these into their offerings. Winterize your favorite summer activities. I'm fortunate I live about a half hour from the beach, and the idea of bundling up with a hot cocoa or hot coffee and walking the beach on a Saturday and getting ready for sunset is really exciting. So think about those things that you love to do in the summer and put a little bit of a winter spin on it. It means some planning and some adjustment, and it all comes down to clothing. Trust me, as someone who has kids outside in the winter, with the work that I do, it's all about the proper clothing. So think about ways that you can engage with your senses too. You can see here, I love to sit outside with my wonderful frog mug with a cup of tea or cocoa or coffee, all bundled up, and just enjoy being outside on my patio for a little bit. Um, and sensory engagement is one of the best ways to experience winter, especially a sense of smell. So simmer cinnamon and those warming nutmeg spices on the stove with a pan of hot water. That's oftentimes what brings us back to memories of childhood, really positive things, because that sense of smell is a really powerful sense that's connected right to our limbic system. So you can evoke just happy times by just sniffing some vanilla, for example, vanilla extract. Okay, so in terms of your personalized wintering well plan, I just want to kind of give some overall sort of instructions, some suggestions with that as we kind of start to think about coming to a close with our time together. So part of that wellness plan has opportunities for us to assess our winter sort of mindset. What do we currently think about winter, and what are our aspirational, or what would we like to come away as our future thoughts about winter? And then there's opportunities, areas of opportunities, brainstorm ideas. I would encourage you, and it mirrors what we just talked about, those 7 areas of opportunities, to be detailed in your plan. The more that you can put in there about, what supplies you'll need, who you're inviting, potential dates, the more detailed you are, the more likely it will be to happen. And reach out to your network. Accountability partners are wonderful for this, family and friends. Bring everybody on board with this, because most people could use some form of involvement with what we've talked about. Um, and then the other thing that's really important is to just celebrate your commitment. If you're taking small little action steps, celebrate that, acknowledge and be proud of it. That will go a long way in your mindset, and those feel good hormones will serve you and spur you on to continue with this. And like I mentioned, this mindset and this shift and this can-do attitude is really very effective through other challenges and other wintering parts of our life. So again, it's all about planning, preparedness, and practice and excitement. Be creative with this. So I want to thank you for joining me tonight, and I encourage you to savor the season, because it's coming and there's lots of opportunities for joy and wellness and restoration within the next couple of months ahead. So I will stop talking. If there are any final comments or questions in the chat, I want to turn it over to Mary to see if there's anything that we can kind of touch back on.
Some of the comments, okay, there was one comment about love the poor clothing choices. This attendee is thinking of getting ski pants so she can continue walking in the winter. Okay, lots of thank yous. And this has been a great program, Kelly.
Well, we're all in this together. All of you, I'll be thinking of you this winter, and again, enjoy it. Savor the opportunities. That's the whole key.
Great. So, yeah, these have been some really great suggestions. Want to thank you to our audience for joining us tonight.
Yes.
And if you have enjoyed this workshop with Kelly, you will love her nature walks that she does have when the weather is a little bit better and we can negotiate the terrain.
No crampons or microspikes needed, Mary.
No. No, no. And I did put in the chat, this recording will be posted on the AARP YouTube channel in a few days, so that you can enjoy this event again. So thank you very much, Kelly, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. It was
All
really a
right. Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you. Happy wintering, everybody.
One, two. So just give me a moment here, Kelly. I'm trying to. Oh, here we go. Right in front of my eyes.